Now here's an aftermath. November 19th of 45, the war was over and Tom was coming home. Tony Campanigro was detained for lice and bugs. You came home with another ex-GI, someone you met on the train who was also going back to Philly. The first stop was at your sister and brother-in-law's place. That night you arrived in Philly, it was pouring rain. You slept over your sister's house and you talked a lot. Jim's family came over too, but noticed that Fred and Lee did not know you were there. Jim wanted to stay with them. You could tell something was wrong between Fred and Jim. The next day the rain cleared. You started out early that day to go home, hoping things would be the same. Some people you met were glad to see you, but it seemed some people thought, here comes another broken down ex-GI who wants to be on the public dole. But they were wrong. You were trying to get yourself together. You didn't know which direction to go. You felt worn out. The reception you got at home did not do you any good. Your bed was gone and sold, and your stepmother wanted to know why you put your sister's name on your Army war policies. Your brother Gus did not think you were going to make it back home alive. Down deep inside, you knew it was just a matter of time you'd be leaving again. It was time for you to go to your old job and see what it was doing. You spoke to your old boss, and he said to you that his son took your job, and that left you out. Again, you felt that you had been away too long, and you had to find something else to do. There was a lot of ex-GIs and no jobs. The government was trying to train them, but there just was no jobs. The government was replacing people that had worked during the war with returning GIs, and that did not have a job to go to even before the war. What a lot of people knew was if you had a job, no matter how small or what it paid, you had to report back to that job. The firm that you had worked before the war now had no job to offer you. You met Mike Rossi, he was in the same boat. You decided to join the Army again for overseas duty, so you brought out discharge papers to recruiting office. The sergeant read the papers and said, you ex-GIs have been through enough. Go take it easy and rest. So out you went, continuing to try to put the pieces together. In the meantime, you went to Esther's house. They told you that her uncle had passed away and that she had gone to California during the war. You wrote to her and she answered. She was happy to hear that you were still alive. You kept writing to each other. Now there was a question of the returning GI, if you had too many setbacks. You were beginning to wonder, what did we leave the country for? You felt like you were being used, only that trying to get back on your feet again, but it seemed that you kept being knocked down over and over. In the meantime, you were slowly breaking down, but you refused to go down. You felt something was wrong. You decided to go to the VA and explain what was happening, and you made an appointment. You spoke with your brother-in-law Jim about what was happening. Jim said you must come live with us until you get started again. You kept writing to Esther about everything and about what was going on and where you were staying. A week later, you got a call from the owner of the place you used to work. He said if you still wanted to work, you could come back soon. You went back. It was a fresh start. You explained to the owner you had to go to VA once a week, and that was a must. He agreed to the terms and kept his word. At that time, his top help was making 75 cents an hour. He paid you $1 an hour plus 2 holidays and a week vacation. Plus, when you reached age 31, you'd be in a company pension plan, and you had to work hard to get it. You had a department to run. You had to set and fix machines and keep a log of everything. You were the only white person. Everybody else was black. Race relations were not what they are now. You were the chief cook and bottle washer. You wrote to Esther about having a job, and she was happy. She was there, and you were in Philly, and you were wondering what to do. You were still on a merry-go-round with a lot of questions that needed to be answered. You'd go to the VA once a week. There were GIs worse off than you were at times, so you didn't feel so bad. You were still in Army uniform, but had to get a suit or shoes, which was hard because the country was still making a changeover. You went to a tailor to order a suit that was made, and it took 3 months before you got it. Then you got to find out why Jim and Fred were not on speaking terms. There was a misunderstanding. Your sister Yolanda was in the hospital and Fred couldn't make it. He was homesick with a bad cold. You went back and explained to Jim what had happened, and Jim said that he didn't say that he was not well. Jim thought that Fred didn't care for his sister. Fred later came over and made up with Jim. Meantime, you kept writing to Esther. She wrote back from California how nice it was. You saved some money to take a trip out west. You spoke to your boss and told him what you wanted. He gave you some time off. You wrote to S that you were coming, and you had to notify the VA of your intentions to go out west. Since it was for several weeks, you got the okay. So off you went. 4 days of train travel. S met you at the train station. You were happy to see each other again. You met her sisters and her father. He was nice to you and talked a lot. He lived by himself and ran a junk business. You found a place to stay in the neighborhood. S took time off, and you went places of interest. The weather was beautiful, warm during the day and cool at night. In the meantime, you noticed something was wrong with S and her 2 sisters. You couldn't figure out what it was. Something just was not right with S living with her sisters. Meantime, your time in California was ending. You had to get back to Philly. You promised your boss that you'd only be gone for a few weeks, so east you went. You were home for just a short while and decided to go back to Esther in California. You talked to your boss and explained your intentions of again going out west. He calmly said if you run into any trouble, your job will be waiting for you. Your brother-in-law said the same thing. So you went to Esther's home again in Philadelphia. Her cousin Babe told you, bring S with you when you come back. So off you went to S in California, and you were married in Gardenia, California, November 17th of 1946 by Judge Elmo Morris. He made his first audio recording ever of your ceremony. Her father and 2 sisters were there. You honeymooned at Laguna Beach. When you got back, you got a job in a furniture place. The job didn't last. Then there was a job opening at the post office at night. You had no car and public transportation stopped at midnight. So you wrote to your brother-in-law. Jim wrote back, and Esther and you packed up and went back east. You lived with your sister and brother-in-law until you got jobs. Meanwhile, you had to report to your counselor at the VA. You went to see him with Esther, and that's when you got into trouble. He told you that you were going to lose the benefits granted by the government because you shouldn't have confided about your intentions of going west and getting married. You had some words, and out you went. You went to the 2nd and Chestnut Street, where General Omar Bradley was the head of the VA. You went straight to his office, and some people there tried to stop you, and you went into the office of the general with Esther. He listened to your story about what happened and what the counselor said was going to happen to you. The general then called the counselor and fired him. He then appointed another counselor to handle your case. This one was a Navy officer, and he was very nice. You were receiving a 10% pension for your feet problems, and some of your medical records had been lost during the war. At work, your boss's son told you that you were losing too much time by going to the VA, and it would be better if you went to a private doctor or lose your job. So you found a doctor in your local area, Dr. Harry Holzman, who was great. You went to him for quite some time, and he got you back up on your feet again. Esther also saw the same doctor.
You remember all that, Uncle Tony? That was a lot to remember.
Yeah.
Did the memories come back?
Oh, well, yeah,